the thing that almost made me dismiss this particular mermaid encounter is actually the thing that makes me think that it is actually real, personally, all right? Mermaid talk come through. We are part 2. If you saw video 1, you would have seen that we were looking at Honey Coco Brown's encounter with what she said was a aquatic being, mermaid creature. What do we think? What do we think about this particular encounter? Leave your comments down below. I have a lot to say on this one. Okay, let's just start with the children, all right? First of all, when these encounters happen, pay attention, all right, to when children are involved in these stories. And it's not because that children are right, because clearly we see children and they can actually think that a cardboard box is a spaceship. I digress. So it's not because they're actively right, but it's because children have what I call miracle tech, meaning they have that unfiltered view of the world before narrative sets in and you kind of lose the inner child and you lose that connection to mystic, magic and wonder, which actually is this reality. It's just an expanded part of it that we are made to believe is bullshit, but it's actually not. And I actually think that the reason why the lady actually saw it is because the child was acting as an anchor, a bridge, so to speak, a tether, all right? It opened the door, able to be seen, and that it was almost like the mother was tethered to the child's energy and she was able to see it. That's one of the things that I felt that was coming, that I thought was going on as well. And you didn't realize that it was actually being witnessed and seen, because even though everybody's open, sometimes not everybody's open to specific frequencies or specific wavelengths, or seeing specific beings. I've experienced it with many people and with myself, all right? Number 2, all right, before we start deep diving, point number 2, the mermaid wasn't pretty. We were not seeing Ariel. We were not seeing the cute little multicolored mermaids that we were seeing in Hook, all right? That immediately takes my interest and makes me stand up and listen. She didn't describe a glamorous fantasy mermaid. What she described was a pitch black being, all right? Not black as in human skin tone, carbon black. What would be known as Vanta black, all right? Vanta black. Vanta black absorbs light. Key. This matters, all right, because underwater visibility is everything. Now, this is where, all right, this is where my water-coded people or people that are down with talking about all things out there, my multidimensional expanded consciousness people sign on, because this is where we're going to deep dive, no pun intended. I'm water-coded. I've said it in my other videos. I do get downloads. I did get downloads. This is what I'm sensing is happening. One thing that actually made me almost give the story pure side-eye and not believe it was the red hair. I realised that that's the one thing that actually opened the door to me actually thinking, apart from her tone, which I genuinely believe was real, because you saw her do the trauma inhale. Immediately you hear red hair, you think, oh, Ariel. However, spectrophysics, this is the key word here, spectrophysics. This is what it means. When it comes to the water, all right, the colours red and orange. I did a video before about everything in this reality is made up on, we are able to see what we see based on the visible light spectrum, all right? The prism, the rainbow, all right? Red and orange are sit in a really interesting place when it comes to talking about light and water, all right? Light, water, and visibility. When you go underwater, colours do not behave in the same way that they do on land, all right? Red light, the colour red, all right, and red light gets absorbed. It's the first colour that gets absorbed quickly in water. Fact, you can Google it, all right? Which means that red objects can actually start to look darker and disappear the further you go. So between depths of between 5 to 10 feet, the red starts to appear darker and darker. By the time you get to the depths, 30 feet, start getting down there, red is almost black. So if you pair this on a Vanta black being, this is a being that essentially is completely camouflaged and cannot be seen. The one thing now that is making me think that this vivid red-orange hair colour may not actually just be decoration and whimsy, all right? It is serving a biological function. camouflage. Camouflage. I'm going to do another video because, like, I've already been collecting stories about Vanta black carbon aquatic beings. This is not the first story that I've heard, all right? That will be in another video. So now we have black, carbon black body, red hair, spectrophysics, water, visibility, and the light spectrum. This is not just sounding like whimsy, folklore, blah, blah, blah. Now we are entering into the realms of science. We're seeing that there might be actual basis and legs, no pun intended, to this situation. In Rosie life, that's not just like spooky story time, all right? This is a pattern, and pattern means So quick tip, when we're looking at these sorts of stories, start to think like this. Start to think, remember this, save it. And that makes me think, all right, did they actively know what they were doing when they gave Ariel red hair? Point number 2, she pointed to the colour that she was seeing on the tail, which also sounded incredibly like Ariel, with this glittery, turquoisey looking tail, all right? Now, when I sat back and thought about that, my mind was immediately drawn to encounters and things to do with the Glimmer Man, all right, as well as the Predator in the movie, because we see that it cloaks. I was getting that what she was actually seeing, all right, this blue, green, turquoise kind of effect was almost like a glitch effect. It was very much giving cloaking. It was very much giving kind of vortex opening. It was giving that. And if you go and you look at Predator the movie, you will see that when it starts to glitch in and it starts to have what is called that glimmer effect, all right, it is because it is rendering in and out. It is phasing in and out of physicality. So that you, in terms of being able to see it, it is effectively cloaking. So it makes me wonder whether this being was rendering itself from one-dimensional space into this dimensional space, and that color and that bioluminescence, almost, that color is what she was seeing. And let's talk about bioluminescence as well, because there is another tip that I most definitely am going to talk about with this, but bioluminescence, it's making me think of bioluminescence and the fact that there are fishes and creatures down there that use bioluminescence in order to cloak itself. And I was thinking that this creature could go into one of two categories. I spoke about in my other video about the fact that there could be aquatic beings that are natural or native to the ocean. They actually live in the ocean. And there are aquatic beings that may be using the water as a portal, a thoroughway, all right? So actively, the tail and all of that stuff that we are seeing is not necessarily their true form. It is but an appendage, like a scuba suit, like an astronaut suit that they put on in order to permeate and survive in that environment. And maybe the true nature of these beings is actually a form of a more ethereal, non-corporeal, bioluminescent form. Think the abyss. And then if we think about the beings and the actual fishes and the creatures that they have found that live in the really deep depths, like the anglerfish, or, you know, there are other types of fishes, they have bioluminescence on their being. And perhaps this bioluminescence is what she was witnessing around what she thought was the tail. That could be also what's going on. So what is also interesting is she said that she believed the being was using some kind of glamour in order to hide its face, which I also think, this is not the first story that I've heard where a very similar thing happened. So I'll find that story and I might do that in another case file so that we can put them and contrast them. But in this situation, it's very interesting that above water, perhaps the bright red hair was serving as a distraction because it's so red that you can't stop looking at it. But at the same time, when you actually pair it with the carbon black skin that absorbs light, it's very difficult to see. So if it positions itself just right, you can't see the face.